All right, good afternoon, LinkedIn. This is Kate Strachny here, going live with Alex Vayner. Alex is the data science and artificial intelligence practice leader at PA Consulting. Hi, Alex.
Hi,
Welcome
everyone.
to the show.
Hi, Kate.
Why don't we start with you introducing yourself, and then I'll talk about what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, sounds good. Alex Vayner. I'm a data scientist, mathematician, computer scientist by training. Studied theoretical computer science at Georgia Tech in grad school and have been doing what's now called data science, but it wasn't called data science back then, pretty much my whole career. First as a data scientist, and the last half of my career as a lead for building data science capabilities, functions, teams. Mm-hmm. That's the story.
So what was it called before it was data science?
It's a good question. I think it was, there's an interesting progression. So I live in Atlanta. Okay. And in Atlanta, one of the big associations is Technology Association of Georgia. So you could follow the story of data science by looking at the society's attack. So first it was called the BI Society, then it became the BI and Analytics Society, then it became Analytics and Data Science Society, and now it is, I think, the Data Science and AI. So I think that's the story of data science. It was first we are doing financial analysis and business intelligence, then we are doing a little bit of analytics, and then it became more focused on predictive and descriptive stuff, and now it's cognitive, right? And sort of the unknown, and how we don't even know what questions to ask, and deep learning and black boxes and all those things. Yes. So, yeah.
All right, well, again, welcome to the show. I think before we get into it, whoever's joining us live, if you can just tell us where you're joining from and if you're a data scientist or not. I think that's going to be interesting in how we drive this discussion. So the few things we're going to talk about today is building a data science corporate function. We'll talk about how to get and keep data scientists, and then creating data products, so the build versus buy decision. And if you all who are joining us have questions around any of those topics or something relevant to those topics, Alex here is happy to answer all questions.
Yeah, and here is, by the way, the Clarksville building in New York City on the 45th floor, where PA Consulting headquarters are in New York.
Yes, and it's actually, I lived in New York for over 20 years, and it's my first time in the Chrysler building, so I'm glad to see the beautiful sights. Maybe I'll turn the camera at some point.
Yeah, I think this is probably as good as office space gets in terms of view. Sometimes it's hard to focus on the work.
Yeah. All right, well, let's get started and talk about building a data science corporate function. Why don't we talk about why we even need a data science corporate function?
Sure. So I think that we've been in the midst of this revolution, right? The data revolution, and I won't bore the audience with sort of why it's here, but basically there's demand in the marketplace for creating data products, for getting more insights, for actually changing your company from one that makes commodity things that actually creates services and capabilities that are engaging customers and creating a lasting competitive advantage, right? So data is that, the ubiquitously used fuel and oil that actually drives all those things. And so for a company to harness that, it really needs to understand what kind of data assets are available, how to acquire them, how to manage them, and how to exploit them, how to build engines on top of them, and how to deliver all those insights at the right time in the right way to the right people to make decisions.
Right, so the data science corporate function does all that.
Exactly.
Or should do all that.
Yes, thank you. That's a very important distinction. It should do that. That's the ambition. That's the goal.
Right.
And I think that there are lots of interesting stories about how companies have gone about doing that. So
we like stories. Alex.
Yeah.
Tell us a story. Go ahead.
So the typical story is, well, maybe even to go back a little bit, right? The previous 15 years, we've got into this whole the 3 V's of big data: velocity, volume, and variety. And companies were running a race of just aggregating data. And about 5 years ago, this wave started of like, well, now we've been collecting data for a while,
right?
But we have no idea what to do with it. So like the last 5 years, the talk has been, insights, right? Because it's data everywhere, but no insight. That's
Right.
the rhyme of the ancient mariner, right? The water everywhere. So
Yes.
so that's the idea of the problem last 5 years, right?
Mhm.
So in what's happened is that before it used to be let's just maintain data warehouses, and now it's shifted into how do we generate business value? How do we get ROI from data? How do we
Right.
do it quickly? And that actually has engendered some of the tension in corporate culture, right, between business and IT as well, right? Because business wants value now,
Right.
and IT wants to say, listen, Rome wasn't built in a day.
Yeah.
It takes time and energy and planning and strategy. So the first pivot of this wave was, I call it the Mckenzie Pivot. So the Mckenzie Pivot was, you need to know where you're going before you start your journey, which is certainly not, a bad point of view, right? So they would come in and, them being the big strategy firms would come in and they would do here's a 3 to 5 year roadmap. And the way we would get to that roadmap is we interview 150 people, we ask their opinions, we benchmark you, and then we tell you it will take $5 million in 3 years to build this type of analytics OE.
Right.
So that's not really a good story most of the time, because by the time they're done, a couple of things happen. One is technology is changing at an exponential rate.
5 years, everything
Yeah.
will be different.
Now if you read articles, it's actually some things like quantum computing are changing at a doubly exponential rate, which
Yeah.
is basically an insane rate. You can't even really fathom what that means.
Yeah.
Not you, anyone,
No, I know,
really,
yeah.
anyone can't really understand what doubly exponential is, right? But the idea is, because it's changing so fast, there's not really an opportunity to capture that if you're sitting and planning 5 years out. So
Right.
that's the biggest problem with it. The second problem is that it was usually removed from IT. So you know where you want to go, but you have no idea if you have the right vehicle to get there. So it's well, we want to get there and we want to do it in 3 hours, but we only have a bicycle, and that
Right.
takes a car or a
Right.
plane, right? So
Yeah.
and the third problem was that actually it didn't take into consideration that to get the buy-in after you create the deck,
Yeah.
people actually like to see something.
Yeah.
So
like
that's
a prototype.
yeah. So that's the breakdown of what I call the top-down approach to building that function, right? It's smart because you need direction, but it doesn't have. If you think of it as a vector, right? As a scientist, I think vectors have direction and magnitude. So the top-down is you have the direction, but you have no magnitude because you don't know what kind of tool you need, right?
Right.
The other approach, which pivoted from there the last 3 years, I would say, is okay. Forget about strategy. Let's just go, right? Let's build POCs.
Right.
And then you get to this graveyard of POCs, right? Where there's so many POCs. We have no idea what to do with them because you never actually decided that what we want to focus on is marketing, right? Or we want to focus on is pricing, right?
Right.
And so you have the magnitude, but you have no direction. So sort of
it's a balance between
right.
those.
So what I've been doing a lot with some success, and I think companies are slowly embracing this, is the hybrid approach. It's not top down, it's not bottom up, but it's let's plan, but let's not fool ourselves. We're not
Right.
planning for 5 years. We're planning for a year. Let's do a small roadmap. And then also let's implement. Let's do 1 or 2 POCs, but let's do it smartly. Let's get the buy-in from the business.
Right.
Let's-
As you're building, right? Just
Exactly,
iterative
right? And
approach.
even before you build, right? That's also the common story, right? The IT organization will hire a consulting company. And they said, listen, we need to build something before we get to show the CMO what we're doing.
yeah.
And then 3 months, POC is over, you're ready to show it, but they can't get the meeting with the CMO because he says, actually, my directive from my board is, marketing ROI, and you've done marketing mix modeling and showing me channel attribution. And those two things are different, right?
Yeah, right.
So one doesn't really connect with the other. So that's the breakdown. So this hybrid approach is just doing that.
So thank you for sharing that. Is this something that PA Consulting currently does? And if yes, how do you guys help companies build that corporate function?
So yeah, the short answer is yes. That's what we do, and we do it by offering a data and AI strategy solution where, we do a 3 to 4 months engagement, and it's a combination of both of those things, right? It's a light roadmap. It's it's stakeholder management, but it's done in parallel with, let's find a use case and let's actually build out the use case into a POC. So at the end of that period, you actually have both you have the vision, you have the roadmap, you know the direction, and you have some magnitude. You have feasibility of a particular use case, and then you can decide, let's industrialize that, or let's do more use cases, right? And that's the beginning. It's the agile way to actually build an organization, right? It's the pirate way.
The pirate way?
Yeah.
Tell us more.
Yeah. So.
Pirate as in like on a little boat in the Caribbean.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
so it's the so my thinking on this was influenced by by a book called Be More Pirate. So
Be More Pirate.
Be More Pirate. So if you guys have the opportunity, just type in Be More Pirate into Amazon, and for
so you recommend
$6.95,
yeah,
you can be a pirate too. So yeah, highly recommended. Sort of the core of what Be More Pirate focuses on are sort of these big tenets of being agile in everything, right? It's got the big 5 R's of piracy, which are, I think the first one is rebel, so sort of, get away from the status quo.
Yeah.
Then I think it's rewrite the rules, right? So if you're throwing some of the rules out, you got to write new ones, otherwise it's anarchy.
Okay.
Then I think it's reorganize, so, right? Change how you work. Then it's, I think, redistribute, right, and bringing in fairness. And then I forgot the last R.
I was trying to Google it.
Yeah.
Find it.
Anyway, it's retell, which is what I'm doing
retell.
now.
Okay, got it.
I'm retelling. I forgot the thing that I'm in the middle of. So, so the idea is, we talk about agile as software development process, but this is an agile way of actually building an organization, a team, a function, a capability, and people don't think this way, right? They're kind of really tied down to, we need to hire a chief data analytics officer first, and then that person will hire a team, and that's very old-fashioned thinking. Like, let's go and build something out. It doesn't mean that you don't need a chief analytics officer. You probably do.
Right.
But it doesn't have to be waterfall, linear. We need a org chart, and we need to show that org chart to the CEO, and he has to sign off on it. That's the Royal Navy, right? That's not pirates, right? Yeah. So the pirates, you should read the book about this, because I will do a poor job of retelling it. But the pirates, the golden age of piracy from 1600s to early 1700s was really about, these folks stood for all of this sort of fairness, and were sort of the genesis of, in a lot of ways, of democracy that we experience today, before the global democracies came onto the stage. So pirates had, for example, pay equity that was actually fair, right? So now CEOs get paid gazillion times more than the average employee. Pirates, the captains and the quartermaster got paid 2 to 3 times what an average crew member would get paid, right?
Okay.
And everybody else got paid fairly,
fair.
right? Like there were, black pirates, white pirates. There were women pirates and women captains, right? So the sort of equality of complete diversity,
equality,
and other things like, they had insurance. If you lost an eye, it would be worth this many gold points. If you lost an eye, and you would actually be given that, and the crew, the community would contribute. Anyways, more about this in the book. But there's a lot of sort of lessons from the pirate ways of being and doing things, and there were also horrible pirates. But the ones that I'm using to model, and the ones that we learn about from the book, are the really cool ones. That's the golden age, and some of the heroes of that age, like Beard, etc. So that's the story of the pirate way of building an organization is what inspires me.
All right, so everyone, you can be a pirate too. Get the book. So just another thing on PA Consulting. Before we started the live stream, you mentioned that you guys are looking for talent. What kind of roles are you trying to fill? Kind of which geographies, which levels?
Yep.
I'm sure the audience would love to know more about that.
So let me even go back a step.
Sure.
tell what PA is actually.
Yeah.
So we are an innovation and transformation consultancy.
Okay.
Sort of the logo is bringing ingenuity to life. But it's very interesting, right? So actually is probably the oldest consulting company in the world. It's about 74 years old, which is very old for a consulting firm.
Okay.
It started in the 1940s during World War II, where basically they asked housewives to design and build the tail gun sections of bombs during World War II. So this is like a World War II initiative that transitioned into a strategy consultancy.
Oh, interesting.
And it's a bit of sui generis, right? It's a little bit of, yes, we do strategy consultancy like McKinsey, but much more important than that is we actually design and build and engineer products, right? So, and that means a couple of things, right? So it's conceptually a combination of imaginative, creative innovation, and the practical know-how to build things. And it specifically, what allows us to do that is we have an engineering hub in Cambridge. We have a digital hub in Belfast, so places where actually we design and build things. We build things now like we have a 3D product that builds chocolates now.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you have some here?
Yeah, no, but we have to go to UK. We're working on the Virgin's Hyperloop on, which is pretty cool. So it's a really different type of company, that's what we do. We're helping clients on their journey, right, embracing this sort of digital revolution, and there are lots of different elements to it, and sort of the old traditional ways of working are no longer working.
Okay.
And so that's I think that's the raison d'etre for PA, and that's what got me excited to come here. And this is my third week here, so I'm starting.
So you're fairly new.
Yeah, and then I'm boosting the capabilities in data science and AI, and really building out the team. So to bring it back to the question you asked, so a couple of things. First of all, so we're in the Americas. We have geographic centers in New York, Boston, Denver, and LA. New York and Boston probably the biggest, but that's where the geographies where we have presence. Of course, we work everywhere. In terms of sectors, we focus on life sciences, we focus on healthcare and energy and utilities, and the most recent focus is on CPG, consumer packaged goods. What else? And then for our audience, the data audience, we're looking for leaders in data, and we're looking for leaders in digital. And in data science, so you heard the locations, and then when it comes to data scientists, so the folks that I'm looking for early on are a little bit of the unicorns that we hear about so much, and everyone says, you can't find
You
a
want
unicorn.
a real life unicorn?
Yeah, so I actually not only want, I know
one. Hold on.
I know the field where the unicorns run free, and but if you are a unicorn and you want to go to pasture in those fields.
Well, define unicorn for those who don't know.
So first, a couple of things. First, a degree in a quantitative field is very helpful. A master's degree is really preferred.
So like
that's
statistics, math.
Yeah, operations, research, physics, computer science, and the reason for that is really because the people need to know the fundamentals, right?
Yep.
There's this expression, you can't coach height.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to teach like fundamental computer science, like if you've never done this before. So that's one thing. The other thing is, really knowledge of the more modern techniques, right? So machine learning, obviously, with all assets of it, supervised and unsupervised learning, deep learning, and then certainly the languages that are now becoming the lingua franca of data science, right? Which is
like Python, R?
Yeah, Python probably more than R, but I would say both are desirable. If you really want to get out there, futuristically Scala, right? You're thinking about industrialization, although there are very few resumes with Scala skills that I see.
Yeah.
And just really knowledge of coding. And then there's the third dimension, which is the unicornish part of you're also a little bit of an architect and an engineer. So you also know how to think through computational aspect, right? You know how to accelerate and parallelize things with Databricks, for example, right? Not a plug for Databricks, but we use it and it works.
Okay.
And it helps you build things faster, right, and deploy them faster. Understanding how the architectures work, understanding how to stand up environments in Azure and AWS, which are the two biggest cloud platforms today, right?
Right.
All of those things. So you mix all those things together. That's kind of, now you got to be a bit of a unicorn. Now unicorns don't scale so well, so that's not the only thing that I'm looking for, but it's probably a good place, in the early stages of exploring, and so if you have those skills, and the cherry on top is if you know consulting, especially at more senior level, manager level, you're gonna have to manage clients sometimes, and manage projects, and sort of knowing
manage staff,
knowing how to do those things in a consulting environment is helpful.
So let's say we have a unicorn listening in right now. What do you want this unicorn to do? Is there a site that they should go on?
Yeah. So they should check out the company, make sure they like it, and then if they really are a unicorn, you can come to me directly, alex.vayner@paconsulting.com. We also have a dedicated recruiter for my roles, Kathleen Kennedy. So you can also email Kathleen.Kennedy, the way you hear it, at paconsulting.com.
Great, and the site is paconsulting.com.
Yeah, it's very easy, just like, I don't know if you can see on the board.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can see it, I think. They can't see the story by data.
Oh, no.
Made it in green, but it's okay, it's all right. All right, so you mentioned some of the sectors, industries, I guess, life sciences, healthcare, energy, consumer products. We had a question come in around banking. Do you want to take a question on banking?
I can take a question. I can also tell you that that's not the core focus in the Americas, but huge financial services segment in UK. So if you're interested in moving to London, there are worse places to live, by the way. Send your resume to me as well, and then banking will be a huge opportunity.
Yeah. So Austin LC asks, basically, he's using data science to build predictive models for loan loss calculations for banks. Do you have any issues that you think he should take into consideration in doing so? So basically building a predictive model.
To calculate loan losses. So I think, probably the regulatory environment to look at is not a bad place to start. I think that you should think about the tools you're using. Most of the tools, the traditional banking tool has been SaaS. And now that's evolving, and now there are like actual loan loss libraries, and that are being built in Python. So I think that's a good place to go, because SaaS, one of the SaaS advantages has been, it's actually got a fairly robust library of various engines for data science, and I don't know for sure, because I personally haven't built predictive models for calculating loans, but and loan losses, but I think that's that's probably an interesting place to go. And I'd ask him actually, like, what environment is he coding in? Is it SaaS? If it's SaaS, then it should be pretty straightforward. Like, you have a whole set of libraries, and you're not actually writing the code, you're customizing it a little bit. But if it's Python, it should be actually a little bit more interesting.
Well, you two can catch up after, or Austin, if you have more to say, please feel free to comment. And David Brooks said that he's working and hopes to catch this on YouTube. Yes, this is recorded, and this will be on YouTube, and I'll reshare this again. I think we can move on to the next topic, which is around how to get and keep data scientists. So what can you tell us about that? How do we first attract the talent, and then how do we keep the talent?
Yeah, so that's a biggie. I think that first to normalize sort of and step back and say why are we in this mode, right? So there's a whole article from Tom Davenport maybe 10 years ago, sexiest job of the 21st century, right? And then another stat I saw from Glassdoor was that an average data scientist spends 2 to 3 hours a week looking for a job.
That's it?
And
I thought it would be more.
Yeah, I know, right? And since most of them are employed, right, because they're such a hot commodity, it means that really, like, most of the employed people are spending, basically 5% of their time
Yeah.
looking for a job. And so the reason why that is
And
because
others are lying because they're spending.
that's right. And so I think that the reason for this is that companies make these Napoleonic ambitions and they declare that we are building new cognitive research center, and they hire a chief cognitive data officer, and there's buzz. Mm-hmm. And of course social media amplifies this buzz, right? It's everywhere. Right. And then people come over and they get disillusioned because like Rome wasn't built in a day.
Yeah.
And it takes time, and then you don't only do data science, you got to do data engineering and ETL stuff, and you got to work with visualization tools, and I really just want to write neural network models, right? And support vector machine models and those things, right? So, and that's not really reality. So then they say they think it's going to be better, and of course there's other companies that are saying no, it's better right here, so come over here. So they come over there, and then of course it's the same shit, know. So so that's the reality, and again, amplification of everything. Mm-hmm. So people are finding themselves a little bit, right, and they're sort of there's hyper-threading, there's this thrashing, right, like it's the going between cache and hard memory, and it never stops. So I think that's what's in the marketplace right now. Mm-hmm. So how do you get out of that? So I think one of the things that causes that is there's lack of bona fide, interesting data science work, right? So what that means is that when you start an organization and you have a team of 1 or 2, and you haven't generated that demand, then don't go and hire 5 people, right? And because you'll hire them, you'll pay them a lot of money, but they won't have that much to do. Yeah. So that's why hiring a consulting company in the beginning may be a good idea to see if demand is there. Mm-hmm. If your actual business leaders and sponsors would have an appetite for this thing, because then you can sub the consultants with full-time employees, person, right? That's fine.
It's easier to get rid of a
right, and then it makes it much like pirate stuff is all about scaling without growth. How do you scale without growth? Like growth is like hire 20 FTEs. Scale is like how do I get more shit done and not fire people and keep my attrition numbers down, but at the same time build really cool stuff. So that's one of the issues, and that's how you solve it, right? You leverage some consulting, you leverage contractors if you have to, you build out the demand. Demand comes before the supply, right? So then you don't have to worry about data scientists sitting idly because they're going to look for a job, or getting really like just frustrated with not doing the work they want to be doing, or forcing them to do BI work, which is like the curse, right? So the second thing is culture, right? That sort of proverbial saying that it eats strategy for breakfast, which was not said by Peter Drucker, contrary to popular opinion. So two things. I think one is data science is a young field. It's kind of filled by young people, and they want to be in cool places, like in the Chrysler Building in New York City, but they don't want to be
this is a cool place.
Yeah, right. And they don't want to be in the middle of nowhere, right? So if your corporate headquarters is in Grand Rapids, Michigan, don't try to start a 40-person data engineering and data science team. It's going to be really, really hard to keep the talent there. If you're in the Valley, if you're in LA, if you're in Boston or Chicago, Atlanta, great, those are places where people want to live and be, and there's enough life there. There's also great universities there usually, right? Like think about New York, we have Columbia and Cornell and NYU, and there's just you spit and you hit a top 50 school, right? So the same thing you could say in Boston, right? There are great schools in Chicago and Atlanta, right? But if there aren't great schools nearby, where are you going to get the talent? You have to attract them to go somewhere else. So that's
you pay people more, and you can give them work-life balance.
You can pay.
Not everybody wants to be in a cool city. Come on.
So you can pay them more in the beginning, and then they just
think they'll lose interest?
Yeah, the energy just it's like a balloon, it's exciting because like you're just out of school and you're making 6 figures, that's awesome. And the cost of living there, of course, is lower.
Right.
So you're actually not just making 5%, 10% more than you would in New York.
Right.
You're making like 50% more. But then you realize that there's nothing to do after 6 p.m. and everyone's just at home eating dinner, and that's boring if
Hey,
you're
that's
24.
my life, so I don't know. You're telling me I'm boring now, Alex. Thank you.
No, I'm saying like you have kids, I have kids, you know, like your priorities change,
Yes,
right?
yes,
So
yes. I know what you're
so,
saying.
yeah,
I'm just being difficult.
fun just is transformed
Right.
into something else. But like in your early 20s, in mid 20s, especially if you're still single, you wanna experience that part. So I think that's culture.
So location is one of the ways
Yeah.
to attract talent.
Yeah, and again, like it's a shameless plug, but if you don't have the right location, you could use a consulting company who will come to Grand Rapids and walk there. So
That's true.
So I will go to Grand Rapids and I'll have a team there. But again, you may not want to do that for 20 years. You want to do that for a bit. Again,
Right.
see if there's demand, and then hire slowly. And you can find people to move anywhere, really.
Mm-hmm.
It just may take you longer. And then there's outdated HR, right? Like that's got to go away. And Liz Ryan is one of my favorite writers on LinkedIn.
Wait, I'm not your
Forbes.
favorite writer on LinkedIn?
Yeah, I said she's one, and you're the second one. So she's awesome, and she writes about sort of these annual reviews and 360 reviews, all of that bullshit, the feedback that's once a year. Like that's certainly not the pirate way. The pirate way is like give direct feedback one-on-one, very closely to after whatever the event happened, right? And be transparent and all of those things, and don't do exit interviews to find out like what's not working. Like actually go talk to your people when they're working for you and figure out what's not working. So that's the culture. And I think the third leg of that stool is the money.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure a lot of the people in the audience care about the money, and we should. So a couple of things. So first, I think the stat I saw, an average salary for data scientists was like 170K. Now this is average, could be someone with.
Yeah, I guess depends on cities as well.
Right, and then
again.
and it was like something ridiculous, like 40% higher than software engineer, which is just insane, right? And I don't know if this is a one stat. This is not a statistically significant sample size, I would say probably, but it's there, and so you do have to pay competitively. But I think there's a lot more stuff to the money than this, right? I think people want to be trained, right, and upskilled, and you can pay them by saying you can go and take these training courses, right, online, physically. People want to go to conferences and learn the cool stuff. Like you could say, hey, we will have a budget, and you will have 1 or 2 conferences a year that you can go to and mingle and learn and network.
That is an attractor, yeah.
Yeah, and so if you think about those things, and then of course there's incentives like, hey, if we build a product, let's talk about all kinds of options, right? So if you're a startup, you can give equity, you can do ESOPs, all kinds of things are possible. And so you have to be creative, right? You have to be a pirate when you think about compensation, and not be, a Royal Navy corporate drone saying you will get this much base and this much bonus, no training, no conferences, no upskilling, no opportunities to learn, right? That's really what people want to do. So that's so those are the 3 things I would say, sort of bring it together. Have interesting work, right? Think about demand, get the culture right, location, HR stuff, and get the money figured out, meaning be creative in how you compensate people.
Yeah, I think these are all great points. So the conferences, the training, location, the money, the interesting work. One question I have is, why do we want to keep these data scientists, and how long do we want to keep them? Do we want to, how long is too long? Do we want to rotate and get fresh talent? I think there's also a balance there.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a fixed time, to be honest. I think my answer is as long as they want to be there, right? If there's an opportunity where they're growing and learning, it's good for them, and what's good for them, it's probably going to be good for me. At least that's how I try to design the org.
Right.
So there's not really, I don't need new blood to come in just to create new thinking. I don't need people to leave, but if they want to leave, I think of people as, they don't work for this company, they don't work for me, right? I work for them, and that means I'm invested in their career. So if their vision is, hey, I tried this consulting thing, I was here for 3 years, I learned a ton, I delivered a lot of value, now I want to go be in a corporation. Okay, like you should try that out, and like especially if it's someone who's young out of school and they don't know what it's like,
Yeah.
and they're wondering like, why would I want to put golden handcuffs on them, right? Like,
Right.
so the way to keep people is interesting work, and that also solves the question of, do I want to keep them? Like, if I can generate interesting work, then and they are interested in the end, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's also a great strategy for, let's say they do go back to industry or corporations, then you can go and sell to them. You have a friendly client. Then.
Yeah, I won't lie that's
another strategy.
I think that's the strategy for a lot of the top strategy consulting firms, right? And then they place the person who's actually the buyer, the EVP who is going to buy a $20 million implementation program, and that's how you sell.
Yeah.
So that doesn't hurt either.
Yeah, of course, I've seen that happen. All right, I think. Anything else on getting and keeping data scientists before we move?
No, unless there are questions.
Yeah, if you guys have questions on anything we're talking about, feel free to put it in the comments, and I'll go ahead and ask Alex. All right, so we're going to move on to creating data products, the build versus buy decision. So companies have products, right? They need to either build them or they need to buy something ready-made, or I guess sometimes there is a mix where you can hire somebody to come and help you build it.
Right.
So you hire the talent. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I guess if you unpack this, right, you can buy something, you can build something.
Yep.
If you buy something, there's going to be probably a subscription model type of offering, right, for this product. That's really mostly how the products are implemented today.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's no high upfront cost. You're just buying a solution. There will be a monthly fee of $50 or $50,000, whatever the product is.
Right.
And that's nice. Like it's steady. Like you're managing risk from that perspective, from revenue perspective.
Mm-hmm.
The disadvantage is your partner sets the price. So if they increase the price tomorrow, that's tough. And then if you're a cost-based provider, then and you're managing a margin, right? Then
Right.
somebody just increased your cost, your margin dropped. Now you got to increase the price to the customers. It starts a spiral, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's no control over price. That's the negative.
Yeah.
And the other negative is there's no control over IP. So if something happens, right, and if it's it's a small startup and the CEO is hit by a bus and they disappear,
Yeah.
like so is your product, and so is all of the insight you're generating for your customers.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the disadvantages. The other advantage I didn't mention is that you can get it quickly, right? So the product is ready now.
Right.
So again,
So the build you're saying will take longer than
the buy is steady price and ready now. The negatives are no control over IP, no control over pricing. The build, where I see more and more clients going, is the advantages are that you have control over the IP, exactly the mirror.
Right. So
you have control over pricing.
Mm-hmm.
You have to invest a bunch of cash in the beginning to build a solution.
Yeah.
Right? And that's so the curve, if I was to draw a curve, like it's the build curve is high starting point and it sort of swindles down and asymptotically goes down to like whatever it takes to manage.
Mm-hmm.
The buy curve is just a flat line, like you're just paying a fee, and probably it's going to be a line that goes up.
Yeah, a little bit slightly curving up, right?
Because they're going to keep
Prices
increasing
go
the
up.
fee, right,
Yes.
and all of those things. So
Yeah.
maybe like a step-wise, flat line. So
Right.
anyway, so that's so within each one there are also decisions. So within buy, you can buy a small product from a startup. Again, there's risk because they can go get disappeared, or they can get acquired by a competitor, and then what do? You're screwed.
Right.
Or you can buy a big product from major product players like Microsoft.
Right.
Which is cool. You still have that same problem with the buy decision, but at least Microsoft is not going anywhere, right? So that's a decision calculus to think through.
Yeah.
On the build side, you have similar ideas. You could build yourself. You can build with a consulting company like PA or Accenture or Deloitte or any of the consulting companies. you can, and then there are two scenarios when you build with a partner. Either they use complete open source and they build from scratch, right? Or they use a platform that exists, like an Azure and AWS, and even couple it with let's say, an Azure product that already is there, an AWS product, and they enhance it. And that model, I think, works really well because you're actually getting the speed to market angle, right? Because there's already a product, right?
There, right?
So you can shorten the development time.
Yeah.
You have still dependency, but your dependency is on the platform, right? And again, like Amazon and Microsoft are not going anywhere anytime soon. And you can actually maintain your IP, right? So I actually, like, I'll customize the code, I'll write it in Python, I'll execute it by Spark, etc., and I have it, and it's in cloud, private cloud, wherever it is, but you have the IP, you have the control, you can change it. You can change your consulting partner, right? Like, we build it, and then you want to bring in it's your code and it's your solution.
Right.
So that's probably from that tree, right? And the branches. That's the solution that I think I would prefer.
Yeah.
Is I want to own the IP in general. Like, there are specifics right around each company, and if you want speed to market more than anything, and you don't care about your IP, then buy the solution and buy a product, right? If that's not the most important thing, probably building is the better option.
So who would you say are the key stakeholders in the company that would kind of come to that conclusion and make the buy versus build decision?
So whoever is responsible for the generation of the outcome. So if it's a marketing solution, like, it probably should be a chief marketing officer. If it's a pure IT function, it could be the CIO. But really, or it could be the president of a business is actually a solution to provide a solution to a particular line of business. So I had a customer call me last week, and he is, healthcare company. They're thinking of a sales enablement tool. Okay. So.
Like Salesforce or?
No. So this is not at all like Salesforce. Salesforce is more traditional CRM.
Yeah.
They're thinking a client, is online and they want to know, they're typing up and they want to know, hey, there are two healthcare plans. They're complicated, very risky. I need help to understand them. And how do I create an AI product that helps a salesperson on the other end engage?
Like a chat bot kind of.
It's a chat, but very focused. But exactly, but very focused on sales enablement. So, like, we went through, and a couple of small companies, like, this is what they do. Yeah. Right, and then there are chatbots and specific sales angles, probably also at IBM, another product company.
Right.
So that's the, you can have the buy solution, you can have the build, etc. And at least in my experience, one of the biggest challenges is that no product that I've experienced actually works out of the box. So we had an experience for a telco client where we were working with a major big product player, and they said, oh, we've been working on this for 5 years, etc., etc. And then of course we come in and it's you basically have to reconfigure everything. You have to spend a year. So it's like, well, I thought this was a product that's like...
It's out of the box, but it's a process.
Right, so then it's like, well, you might as well build it yourself, because guess what? 90% of the machine learning tools, techniques are already online. They're already out there. They're free. They're open source. And it just takes a little bit of wherewithal and a little bit of, like the sort of energy and focus and money to say, okay, like, let's not just buy a subscription. Let's actually leverage it. It also takes an existing team or a consulting partner to say, listen, we scanned the marketplace. Here are the options. Like, you can buy these 3 different types of products, and these are the pros and cons of them. Or you can build. This is how long it would take. This is how much money up front you'll need, etc. So at PA we help customers make those decisions all the time. So a lot of the times the mistake is, I'm not going to think, I'm just going to go and buy a subscription model, and then a year later it's like, well, it just went away, and what do you do now? So.
But then there's the flip side where you can always cancel the subscription, where you can't get your money, like, you can't really cut off something you build, because that's kind of a waste, right?
Yeah, so you can cancel the subscription, but then all of the insights that you build and all of the learning actually that their models have done on your data, that just disappeared.
Right.
So now you got to go start from scratch.
Yeah.
Whereas if you build it like, you can change vendors, you can change, data scientists, like the data and the algorithms are staying right there. So
Right.
that's so you have control.
Mm-hmm. Well, Alex, I think this was a really good discussion. I think we got a lot of
Okay.
good engagement here, and there were other questions that came in, if you want to go back and answer and talk back to, I think Austin also responded back around banking and SaaS.
Okay.
So if you want to follow up with him
Yeah,
on that.
yeah. We'll drop me an email, Austin, and we'll chat.
Yes, but thank you again for joining, and his company is PA Consulting. Go on the website paconsulting.com to learn more. And for those tuning in now, he is hiring, so
Yeah.
data scientists, unicorns,
Yeah, in
AI specialists, managers, consultants.
in New York, Boston, Denver, Atlanta, LA.
All right. Well, again, thank you for joining, and this will be up on YouTube in a day or so if you missed the live stream. Thank you.
Hi guys.